live anyway. Let's see. We could possibly be live right now.
Well, yay.
And if we are, everybody can go get some coffee. Well, no, it's 10 o'clock. They need to have their coffee. They need to settle in and they need to get ready. That's what they need to do. Don't you think?
That's right. That's right. Because, I was ready, but then I made a last second decision to utilize Google Drive, and now I've got to move stuff. So it's going to take me a minute.
That is fine. If somebody wants to join our group, so I'm going to let them in while we're getting set up. We can approve Dennis. Hopefully he joins us. Okay.
O'Connor?
No, a different Dennis Grimes. But we are live.
Okay.
We are live.
Awesome.
Okay, so now I get to do every week I do this, and every week the volume blast, and then I fix it, and everything's good. Now it's done. That was painless this time.
Wow. Well, I resurrected a mug I've had hidden away for a while. Isn't it super cute?
What's it say?
It says, "Is it Friday yet?" I just love the size and the shape.
I do like that.
And she's a cute little reddish haired girl.
Very cute. And it's not Friday yet.
Not Friday yet.
Not Friday yet. But every day's a Friday now.
Only because we do Monday morning coffee and compliance do we know it's Monday.
That's right. That's right. And I got the same old cup. I don't really have anything in it now. I've had enough caffeine. Everybody could only take so much caffeine out of me. So anyhow, how are you, Lori?
And life is good.
Good.
This month is flying by.
Oh my God, tomorrow is the first day of fall.
Yeah.
That's like latte time. Oh crap. Let's see. My window's open. So if it gets loud, I have to run away for a second. It's just I'm shutting the window because who knows what's going to go on out there. But it's not gardener day, so we're okay.
Okay. Awesome.
So let's see. So what are we talking about this Monday? First off, did you feel the earthquake this morning?
I did not feel the one this morning, but I felt the one the other night at 11:30.
Well, we had one this morning.
Oh, what time was that at?
It was at 6:21 a.m. and the epicenter was kind of like in the mountains between Elsinore and Rancho Santa Margarita.
Oh.
And you would think, being that close, I would have felt it. And I was sitting here at my desk at 6:21 and I had no idea. Yeah. But it's been earthquakey quite a bit lately, I think. Hopefully we don't have any more earthquake weather.
Well, yeah, that's a reality.
Well, I thought for sure when it was hot and smoky, I thought for sure that was going to be like earthquake weather time, but usually it's that weird kind of humid, thunderstormy kind of stuff. But hey, you know what? We got October coming. We need some sort of thing going on. I'm sure earthquakes could possibly pop up, but that reminds me, one of these days we're going to have Aaron Rosen join us.
That's a great idea.
I think we should do that. Too bad Aaron's not in this group. I'm going to have to fix that. Okay. Anyhow, Aaron is our favorite insurance broker that has gotten me out of some insurance jams and my clients in the past, and we would love to have him come on and talk. But what are we talking about today besides earthquakes and what's shaking?
What's shaking?
I was all clever today. I want everybody to know on my little graphics I had, just this nice little boring tagline. And then this earthquake hits, everybody's talking about it. I got to change it all up, redo all the graphics, get them all.
Well, honestly, I think that's perfect because, we try to come up with our topics ahead of time. And in the beginning, it was easy. It was just COVID all the time. And now there's not much information, not a lot changes as much as it was previously. And so, I have to dig a little deeper. And so Lisa threw out a couple topics and I said, yeah, I've just kind of got a hodgepodge of things. So what's shaking is good because it's like, there's a couple little things that are shaking. I have one little segment that's called Things I Didn't Know. So things I learned in the last week that I'll share with others. And
the Stump the Queen? No.
No, it's like just little resources that, I overlooked or or are new. And so I figured, well, if I didn't know about it, maybe a lot of people don't know about it. I like to think I'm pretty up on a lot of things that happen, and a couple of things I was like, oh, I didn't know that. So where shall we start? I'm still trying to get my documents to jump into Google Drive real quick. But my computer's a little slow. So what do you have? Anything quick and dirty that we can chat about while I'm
That I can talk about here?
Yeah. Poor choice of words.
Not much. You know, I mean, there was some things I didn't know that I think we're going to cover here, because it was kind of like, well, what is this and what does this mean to me? And you know, I think there's things happening that are out there going on that agents on the street have no idea. We had our risk management committee meeting for our local association last week. And we have a lot of the large brokerages have representatives in there. And they'll start talking about things, and I'm over here saying, I'm the boots on the ground realtor, and I have no idea what it is you're talking about. And I kind of felt that way this past week, where it's like, I think these are things we need to know. So these were things Lori knew, but Lisa didn't know. So, you know, I think there's stuff changing out there. I think we have some different things out in the real estate stratosphere that we're going to be hearing more about. Like, you know, we all know about the renter eviction moratoriums and forbearance kind of stuff, but what's happening to the mom and pop landlords? I think we're going to be hearing a lot more about that, because now they're like, oh, excuse me, you told my tenants it's okay not to pay rent. What am I supposed to do? So I think we're going to be hearing a lot more about that.
Definitely.
That's all I got.
Yeah, well, you're real good at helping me stall. Thanks.
I'm sorry. Okay, let's see what else do I have. You know, here's something I'd like to ask the group out there. And I know there's like I keep getting notification for 10 o'clock Monday morning Facebook Lives going off right now. So, you know, bless all of you that are here joining us, because there are a lot of Facebook Lives that you can choose from right now. But we're happy that you've joined ours. And I want to know what people are seeing in the market right now, in your marketplace. I know Inez is on here. You know, you're out there pounding the pavement. You know, what are you seeing? Lily, what are you seeing? You know, I kind of gleaned a little bit from Stephen Thomas on Friday that maybe things are starting to slow down a little bit. I'm kind of like in between listings at the moment. So I'm kind of out of it on the day-to-day, but if you guys can put in the comments, what are you seeing? What are you feeling out there? You know, I'm surprised to hear that people are still being laid off their jobs. I think that's starting to get a little scary, in my opinion. You know, you thought that the huge tsunami of layoffs was over, but we still have an abnormally high rate of people filing for unemployment the first time. But you see hiring signs all over the place. But who's getting laid off, and are they willing to go take these jobs that, you know, were like Lowe's and Target and stuff like that, you know? So I don't know. I'm kind of in a spot myself. Jeff says slowing down both inventory and buyers. Thanks for chiming in. Anybody else? You know, because I'd love to know, because I'm kind of feeling like a little bit of a slowdown. But if this was a, shall we say, suspended spring market, we'd be heading into the slowdown anyhow, which really I kind of think we might need, especially with our buyers. Our buyers need to be able to take a deep breath and make smart decisions.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see industry by industry what the changes are, you know, because I think restaurants and retail, even though they've opened up a bit more, especially restaurants, you know, they are still limited, and it's still a concern for them of whether they can afford to have their employees work, even if they are perceived by the public as, well, they're open, so they should be busier. They're still having to manage their costs differently than they were before. So there's not a lot of hiring going on in some cases there, but the industries like hotels and airlines, those are the ones that are really getting hit hard.
Yeah, I think we're starting to see the airlines really start doing their layoffs. And I mean, I know so many, yeah, I know 3 people that were offered and took early retirement, 2 at American and 1 at Delta. And I hear that there's more coming, that they're doing the early retirement first before they do the layoffs. But you're looking at like United, I think, said that they're going to be laying off 19,000 people. And we're all like, well, we're going to see if we can make it till October, November. Oh, now there goes Lori in the screen sharing. I thought I went into oblivion. But I think that we're going to be seeing more of the corporations that are like, we can't keep this up.
Yeah, we can't do it anymore.
Yeah, and it's a shame. A lot of us think that the people that are all like, we're going to go out here and live our lives, and which everybody number one is entitled to their opinion, and we need to be respectful of what everybody's opinions are. But I think there's still the overwhelming amount of the populace is like, I am not comfortable. I am not going on an airplane unless I have to. I'm not going out to dinner unless I have to. And we need to be cognizant of that. We may see people out, and saying this and saying that, but we're not seeing the ones that aren't out there. And I think that could be starting to affect things a little bit more.
Yeah, because originally, the people that unfortunately lost their jobs were the typical lower wage workers that weren't going to be in the market to buy a home anyway. But if we're looking more at other professions now, including executive levels in some of these huge industries, then that makes a difference. That changes our buying pool, and it may change our seller pool too, because now, we may have sellers that have to sell. There was an interesting stat though that Leslie Appleton Young gave on Friday, and I didn't write it down. I don't think I did. Actually, no, I did. This was a national stat, and even though consumer spending is up 2.5%, she said 1.06 million borrowers for mortgages are more than 30 days late on their mortgages, and they could have filed for forbearance because they have equity. Well, they could have filed anyway, but they also have equity, and they didn't file for forbearance. And 600,000 of those had federally guaranteed loans where they definitely could have filed for the forbearance, but didn't. So that's 1 million across the country. So somebody asked, well, hey, was that a national stat or a California stat? So they clarified that it was the national stat, and they're estimating around 100,000 in California are more than 30 days late and did not file for forbearance. So that's interesting. So we'll kind of jump right in, I guess, now since now I'm ready, to the things I didn't know. And so the reason we didn't know this is because it just happened. But if you go to car.org, go into zip forms, and go into the forms library, some people didn't know there was a COVID library because you could find all of the COVID forms in the regular library. I think I double clicked and now I have to go back. You could find all of the COVID forms in the regular library, but there was a COVID library. And I talked to a couple of people who said, oh, I didn't know there was a COVID library. So I want to show that just real quickly here. And when you click on new forms, you get to this forms library. It defaults to the CAR library, but click on all and you can see the COVID library. But what's new is now there's a lease library and a sales library. Because we have so many COVID forms now, and there are 12 more because of AB 3088, they've now split it into 2 separate sub-libraries. So that's one thing I didn't know, and that just happened. So I wanted to point that out to everybody. So you've got your lease forms here and your sales forms. Now for the leases, and we'll talk about it in a couple minutes on the AB 3088, I'm gonna cover it briefly again. There are a couple of forms that are already out, and there are more that are coming by the end of the month. So this is where you will find them. And then, of course, if you know the name of the form, you could just search for it in the regular library. You don't have to go to that sub-library. So the other thing I wanted to show you that's actually zip forms related is we actually have a lot of partners that are contracted with zip forms. So we have partners from our local association, we have partners from our MLS, we have partners from CAR that are vendors that want to work with us, that want to give us special discounts on their products. So what a lot of people don't realize is that zip forms also does that. And so if you are interested in any of the 13 products they currently offer, on the landing page of your zip forms, go to partners. You'll be able to see all of the different agreements with the companies they have, like DocuSign. So you can see, I don't have a claim account on DocuSign because I'm a DocuSign subscriber, but I don't have anything else. And there's a lot of different products here. I don't have my Glide linked. I've used the PED one and just went direct on that other link, but I haven't actually linked my account. I do plan to, because we're going to see more from Glide in the next year. But there are a lot of different programs here where you can opt in. So, you know, we get some pop-up ads periodically through zip forms. And so people have asked the question, well, is zip forms selling our information? So the CEO of Rebs was on the Friday call, and she explained that no, our data is not sold to these vendors. What it is the mechanism to allow agents to opt in is what's available to these vendors. So you'll see the ads, you'll see that we can directly connect with them, but they're not selling our data to them. So they're not directly advertising to us. It's through the software, and you're going to be able to opt into some of these programs. One that I heard about recently is Updater, and that's a moving concierge, and it's got like a checklist within the software that you can connect your client to. So for a buyer who needs to set up all the different things, all the different tasks to help them move, there's an app for that. I don't know anything more about it, like what the costs are or anything like that, but I just thought this was a cool thing that I didn't really know. Like, I see it, but I didn't really know how to get to it, and that's how you get to it. So hopefully
it's kind of like when you sign on to CRMLS, where you have all of the different member benefits there that, you know, it's kind of like icon overload, but there's some really cool stuff there if you know, take your time and go see it. And, you know, this is the pot calling the kettle black, because I'm the first person to say, too much stuff. But now I'm like, you know what, I've been missing some really good things, and I should be checking out those things on CAR as well.
Yeah, and it's specifically with zip forms. You know, REBS is the entity that is looking at these products and vetting them.
Tell us what REBS stands for.
Real Estate Business Services. And I'm on the board of directors there this year and next year. And so it's new to me. Thank you. It's new for me, so I'm still kind of learning the ropes. But, you know, one of the aspects that we are responsible for is helping to vet some of these products. So the staff behind the scenes is getting contacted. They're really digging deep into the products, and they're looking to see, you know, hey, what's new and innovative that really has some teeth that will be beneficial, that isn't a duplication of everything else we already have, you know, so they're mindful of that as well. And so there are only 13 products, but they're different. They're different than what our local association and the MLS will offer. And so it's worthwhile to take some time every now and then and just look and see what's there. Because one of them was like a mileage tracker and other tax tracker. And sure, there are other programs out there, but we owe it to ourselves. We're paying our dues to have these discounts, to have these products available to us. And, you know, for CAR or REBS or CRMLS to say we put our name with this product means a lot. And to me, that means more than just me finding something on, you know, the App Store. So for what it's
worth. What's interesting is we kind of have the inside scoop, because you're on the REBS board, and then I'm part of the CRMLS focus group, where I get to hear of the things that they're checking out. And we had a really good one this past week. And as soon as I find out if they're moving forward with that one, I'm going to let everybody know, because first I'm like, I don't think and then at the end of it, I'm like, oh, hot damn, tell me when we can use this. So, stay tuned, because us nerdy realtors, we kind of have the inside scoop on all that fun stuff, don't we, Lori?
We do, and I'm not that person though that wants to tinker with a bunch of different apps and try to figure out which one has the better features. For me, it's like, tell me who's already looked into it and said, yes, this is good. I'll sign up for it. Like, I don't want to play with it. I don't want to test it. I don't have the patience for that. Put in front of me some research on a legal case, I'll read it. That's where I'll spend my time. So a couple other things I wanted to point out on CAR's website, because one feature that I have listed under things I didn't know is really more of things I forgot, which is the legal podcasts, the Legal Matters podcast. And so it was mentioned in one of the other webinars I was watching last week. And I thought, oh my gosh, I totally forgot about these podcasts. So I listened to a couple of them last night, and they are really good. So one of the ones that I listened to was working with unlicensed assistants. And I have a couple of broker clients who are hiring unlicensed assistants right now. And, they're just a little unclear on all the things that can and cannot be done. We kind of intuitively know what's licensed and unlicensed activities. But then when you stop and think about it and say, wait, I need to supervise someone and make sure they don't do licensed activities because they don't have a license, you have to really stop and think about those details of what's allowed, what's not. So that one here, it's the number 243. It's 15 minutes long, and it's very engaging, very not entertaining, but it keeps you up. It's not boring. Jana is one of the attorneys that presents it. There's another woman attorney, I forgot her name right now because I don't hear her name hardly ever. But it's a really good one. But also, they've got contingency sales. They range from like 15 minutes to 40 minutes. And so, I would encourage people to browse through the topics. These legal bedtime stories are really great. It's the horror stories that sometimes we just need to tell our agents so they will realize, hey, sometimes we don't intend something bad to happen, but something bad happens. And these are the things, that keep brokers up at night. So
why do they call them bedtime stories? It would horrify me. I would be.
Well, because they're the things that keep us up at night. And so, I don't know, someone's writing them while they're trying to go to sleep. I don't know. It's a cute name. Because they read it to you basically in a sing-songy kind of story rather than we're going to read you the court docket and here's what happened.
So do they end it up with, and the licensee lost their license forever. Good night.
I know. You have to check it out.
I'm going to have to check it out.
And then just one other cool thing I wanted to point out, something that I use all the time. So it's not in the I didn't know this category. I use it all the time, but a lot of people may not realize it's there. Sorry, I always screw up on this website. I click back too many times.
Oh, we always like to see who's sitting in the chair, because sometimes it's somebody you know.
I know. That's so fun when it's somebody you know.
Mm-hmm. You're like, hey, like one of our local realtors, Parisa, she was in there one day and it was like, Parisa in there.
Oh, that's cool. So I clicked because I forgot that I was going to be demonstrating this. So go to the transaction center from the landing page, and then go to the subheader, risk management. That's where you find the podcast, but also these quick guides. These are one-page helpful sheets that are great for your agents. So there's a couple things that I wanted to point out, a couple new ones. There is Fair Housing Laws one. There's a COVID-19 Tenant Relief Act. So that's the AB 3088. And then there's the Centers for Disease Control Federal Eviction Moratorium. And so when you look at them, they're literally one-page Q&As. So we all know they've got, a huge library of Q&As. I think there's almost 200 of them. what they do with these quick sheets is they pull the most commonly asked questions or the most relevant information that you must know, and they'll put it in a one-pager. So that kind of segues us into the AB 38, the COVID Tenant Relief Act. I would recommend that you review this quick sheet as well as the CDC one. And here's part of what I want to preface with the conversation of the AB 3088 is, number one, I'm not an attorney. Number two, if you are not a property manager, don't get too hung up on this, because for the average agent who's not doing property management, this is way more information than you need to know. And even for property managers, it's a lot of information you need to know, but what you should be doing when your client is faced with a tenant who's not paying rent and they don't know what to do is you really need to hire an attorney. We actually had a referral to us recently where, I don't know the conversation with the agent, but I do know that the homeowner was basically looking for a new property manager because didn't feel or didn't think that their current property manager was doing enough regarding a tenant who's not paying rent. Well, I had it come through on my email and I didn't even read it. I said, hard pass. They need a lawyer. They don't need a new property manager. They need a lawyer because it was a messy situation. I read like 2 sentences of it, didn't need to read the other 6 attachments, and just said, no, pass. They need an attorney. So that's kind of the bottom line on this. If you're a landlord right now, or if you're a property manager working with a landlord and someone's not paying rent, you just need to find an attorney. This is a great time to be a landlord-tenant attorney right now, I'm telling you. But that's not for us to really give any advice. But I am going to pull up a couple of slides because if you do need this information, then CAR did a great webinar earlier this month. I think it was on the 10th, and it's on the website. In fact, let me go back and show you guys where to find it. It's in the risk management section. And let's see if it's going. You'll see the webinars, the pre-recorded, not pre-recorded, the previously recorded webinars, and it's listed there. Come on. Here we go, Legal Live Webinars. It's really good. It's an hour and 20 minutes. I've listened to about half of it, watched about half of it because they do have slides. And it's way more information than an agent needs, but they break it down really well. And so that's it right here. I mean, it's the one that's highlighted right now, Tenant Relief Act. If they change this video, because they do webinars every second Tuesday and third Wednesday, something I didn't know, then they'll move them and they still have their highlighted ones here, but you can keep scrolling down and you can see there's a whole archive of a ton of great sessions. So that one is the Dairy Commissioner one. I watched yesterday, was pretty good too. And then the COVID-19. There's also one on fair housing that I haven't watched yet. So that's up next on my to-do list. So I just want to I took some screenshots from that webinar. I just wanted to go over real quick because again, if you're not doing property management, don't get too hung up on this, but I found what was easier to digest was the labels of the time periods. So we have a protected period, which is the March 1st to August 31st. So if you can't remember the dates, just remember there was a protected period in the beginning of COVID for a long time, which was March to August. That's the protected period. Then we have this transition period, which is September 1st to January 31st. So that's called the transition period. So depending on when a tenant didn't pay rent, the rules are different. The rules are different for during the protected period versus during the transition period. And so there are different forms that are required to be used to put the tenant on notice that, hey, you're behind in your rent, even though they already know, but here's what's going to happen. And so CAR has released a couple of forms already. You'll notice that when the next batch of forms are released at the end of the month, they're technically for the period, the transition period, the September 1st through January 31st period. At the top of those documents, certain documents, they will say the period, so you know if you're using the correct form or not. So if you're trying to document rent that was owed during the protected period, it's a certain form and use the date at the top. The form names are similar, but they have identified them as PP for protected period or TP for transition period. So we can upload these screenshots into our files section or in the post for today's session. But that way you can have the screenshots of the time periods. I don't have the forms, we're not going to be showing the forms today, but I wanted everyone to just sort of really kind of reduce it down because all these dates are so overwhelming. So if you reduce it down to here's this period and that period, that's helpful. And of course, the transition period is where, they can get by with paying 25% of rent. They don't have to pay it each month. They don't have to pay 25% in September and 25% in October. They can pay the 25% owed by January 31st. So they can pay you September, October, November, December by January 31st. January's as well. So that's one thing that a lot of people are unclear of. Am I required to be collecting 25% now? The answer is no. And that's not cool, but that's the answer. When you think about it, 4 months of 25% is 1 month of rent. So basically, by the end of December, they really may only have to pay you 1 month's rent, although that applies for January as well. Any
Did they
questions?
talk at all about anything, any legislation or anything that anybody had planned for relief for the mom and pop landlords that, let's say they had a tenant who in March said, oh my gosh, for some reason, COVID related reason or another, I'm not paying my rent. And so now mom and pop have gone through 6 months of no rent payment. Now mom and pop will get 1 month's worth of rent over 4 months. And, right there, you're looking at 10 months worth of rent being due with only 1 month worth of rent being paid at the end of February. And they're having to make their mortgage payment on this property.
Yeah.
The big folks, sorry, Irvine Company and such, I really don't care what happens to you, but I'm really concerned about the onesie, twosie, threesie landlords where this was a retirement plan. They made these investments so they could have this income that they're depending on, and they still have a mortgage that they have to pay, or just hard cost anyhow. You got property taxes and maybe HOAs and fees you have to pay if you're doing property management or whatever. What happens to them? Did you hear anything on that front?
No. There's a couple of landlord groups that are starting. I know there's a group that started out of the city of LA, and they were mentioned on the news the other evening. So I'm going to be checking them out because I own a property. I have a tenant, and I've been blessed. My tenant has paid rent every month and has maintained their jobs and their income. I feel lucky. I honestly feel lucky. So I think it's just going to require those voices speaking loud, because we know we have more households that are rented out than owned in the state of California. And so those tenants' rights groups are pretty big and pretty loud. It's unclear. At this point, I think there's a feeling of, well, the landlords are okay because they can just file forbearance. I think that's just kind of the standard, like, well, no, they're going to be fine because they can just file forbearance. That's not enough. It's not enough. So while I was watching that DRE webinar the other day, though, they did mention a new website, and you can access it through their page, through the DRE's website, but it's landlord-tenant with no space .dre.ca.gov. And when they did the recording of the webinar, it wasn't live. It's live now. And there is some landlord tenant resources, landlord resources. And I clicked through real briefly last night, and really, here's some landlord groups. Oh, good. Let's check that out while we're live. Let's see.
While we're here.
While we're here.
I know the California Apartment Association has been active.
Yeah, so I know there's a group out in LA that started, but there was something. New protections and guidelines for homeowners and small landlords. And then when you click through, it's a one-pager, and it's pretty much, well, you can file for forbearance. It's like, well, that's not that helpful, Here's our protections: federal mortgages. That's all it talks about. So to me, it's not enough. I think that we need to encourage people to participate in these groups and just make sure that people understand that, hey, we are not major corporations, and we are just a couple of months away from losing these homes. And on the news the other night, I thought it was really poignant that this homeowner who has this property to help build familial wealth, and she says, look, like, yes, it's my part of my retirement plan. It's a benefit for me. She said, but the reality is I am providing housing. And she said, this act is unfair because now it puts the burden on preventing homelessness on me. And she said, I don't want my tenant to be homeless, but I'm going to lose this home because I'm not collecting any rent. And now that person's going to be homeless anyway. And I thought it was, an interesting circle of events, that the reality of us trying to protect people from being homeless could very well cause a future homelessness when that homeowner says, you know what, I've burned through all my savings to pay my mortgage. And sure, I have equity, but I've got to go through a refinance to pull it. I can get a forbearance, but how much is that going to help? And, I think I mentioned that stat earlier about the number of people who have equity. Well, they might have lost their jobs. We don't know. I mean, a stat is a stat. We don't know the details. Maybe they lost their job and they can't pull out any of that equity. So we just don't know.
And that can be the problem too. If you have a piece of rental property and your tenant's not paying, and you're like, oh, well, I can pull the equity out of there. Well, no, you can't, because now they're going to be saying, well, you don't have any income.
Right.
The one thing that's really kind of crazy about the forbearance thing, and I haven't been as intimately involved in it as I was a couple of months ago, but the deal with the forbearance was it's not going to affect your credit, but it still affects your payment history. Yeah. And they're going to find out that you're not making a payment. So who's going to give you a loan when you're not making your payments?
Right.
So.
Right. Yeah. It's a vicious circle.
Yeah, that's kind of nasty, because instead of just taking down one person or family, now you're taking down two with the same result.
Exactly. Second to the last thing I want to say on this is, if a tenant if a tenant is behind on rent, there is a notice that must be delivered by September 30th. Regardless of what the landlord plans on doing about recovering that money, there is a notice that has to be served by September 30th. That notice is on CAR's website now. And again, if you are an agent not doing property management, don't do this for your client. We want to be helpful. We want to provide great customer service for future business. But if you're not the property manager, don't act like a property manager right now. Don't insert yourself in a way that is perceived you are a property manager, because then you're part of it. And so while you can't give these notices to your landlord friend, because they're not your client, they're your landlord friend, you can guide them. There are resources available through a variety of other websites. And I think on the DRA website, they mentioned they've got similar forms that have the correct language, but you need to serve that by September 30th. Otherwise, if you don't, and your tenant's behind on rent, you can't claim anything for that period during the protected period, if you didn't give them that notice. Now, if they're current and they basically default during the transition period, then you can still serve this notice, and you have to serve it at that time that it becomes delinquent. So it's very complicated, and hopefully I've explained it right, but I'm not an attorney. I'm just regurgitating what I'm hearing from different sources, and hire an attorney. The last thing I want to say about this is, for me, probably the second most troubling part. The first is the landlords are getting screwed. The second most troubling part is, if you have a lease that is just naturally ending during this time, you cannot get rid of that tenant. You cannot force them out. You cannot say, hey, the lease is ending, see you later, we're not going to renew. And to me, that's really troubling, because you have a valid contract that has an end date. And because of this law right now, we are all under the just cause eviction. And we've heard it from a variety of different attorneys. Danielle Corliss and I keep arguing this point and hoping for a different answer, and we're not getting a different answer. Sorry, Danielle. But, what we're
just joined. It's okay.
Okay. Well, I mean, she's been reaching out to every attorney she knows, because she's got a situation where it's like, the landlord is saying, I just don't know if I want to do this anymore. And since the lease is ending, this should be easy, right? Well, it's not. Now you can ask the tenant, you can mention to them, the lease is coming due. What's your plan? You planning to move? You can kind of suggest, hey, you planning to move? But you can't just tell them, hey, we're not renewing the lease. Based on this law, they have the opportunity to sign another lease. And if they don't, you can evict them for not signing a new lease, but even that's questionable. The attorneys are basically saying, we wouldn't do that until February, because we just don't know how that will be interpreted. So to me, that is really tying the hands of landlords who just genuinely say, hey, the lease is coming due. I should have an easy out, but you don't. And so if you accept rent, now it's a month-to-month tenancy, and you're still subject to these rules. So the alternative is don't collect rent, but that's not a great option. But if you don't collect rent, then you can say, well, we will have a future recourse on eviction because they're not paying rent. So it's a really tricky situation. We keep getting responses that are worded differently, that don't simplify it, but ultimately the end result is no, you can't. So that just sucks. If you wanted to just sell your property, you have to sell it to a buyer who is going to move in. Well, what control do we have on who's going to write an offer? Whether they actually move in? Maybe they say it's going to be owner occupied, and then they don't move in. A seller shouldn't have to condition the sale on the future buyer's plan. And if the new buyer rents it out, we're in violation of this law. Well, whose responsibility is that? So there's a lot of unknowns. So more or less, we've resigned ourselves to, well, we're just going to tell our landlords, because we have a lease that's coming to an end in November in our portfolio, and the landlord said, I don't know that I want to be a landlord anymore. And we've basically advised them, let's just see what the tenant does. If they decide to stay, we'll do a month to month, and hopefully the rules don't change between now and February, where then we can give a 60-day notice and move them along outside of this time period that's been imposed on us. So it's messy, it's yucky.
Well, and I have two questions on that. One, let's say your tenant says, I'm moving out, and you're like, okay, great, I'm going to list the place. You get in a contract. Buyer says, of course I'm going to live in this home. I've given my 30-day notice, or my house is in escrow or whatever. I'm going to move into this home. And then that tenant says, oh, guess what? I changed my mind. I'm not going anywhere. What happens?
The tenant, that original tenant? then they are subject to this law. The landlord is subject to this law. And what's interesting, one thing we forget is selling the property doesn't cancel the lease.
But if the lease is expired and the tenant, we thought they were going to leave and they changed their mind and they're sitting there, it's automatically according to this. And again, I know you're not a lawyer, but I'm just saying
I
here
pretend to play one, but yeah.
on TV.
On Zoom.
So, don't we all?
Not really, not really.
So the tenant now is in there. You have a contract to buy the home, owner occupied, and now the tenant's not there. And now the tenant's still in the property saying, I changed my mind. You can't get rid of me because of these new laws, rules, ordinances. Buyer says, specific performance, you got to sell me this house. What does the seller do?
Yeah, that's a messy one. I mean, you have to follow the new rule now. And so, their intent of moving, if they gave you in writing that yes, they're moving, you can file for an unlawful detainer and attempt to evict them. You just might not be successful because they agreed to it. You didn't impose it on them. They agreed to it. So depending on the details of how that came about, you still have to work within this law, which means either the current owner has to deal with it, figure it out, and follow the proper steps. There are fines, hefty fines, if you violate this law. And so you need an attorney at that point for sure to guide you, because now you've got to figure out, okay, current owner, how do we fix this? How do we remedy this so we're not in breach of the purchase contract, but we're also not violating the law with our tenancy? If you go ahead and close the escrow, now it's the new buyer's issue to deal with. So both sides really need to bring in an attorney at that point and figure out, how do we work within the rules of this law so we're not in violation and still potentially move forward with this sale. So I don't have an easy answer for that. That's
definitely
maybe call 2 attorneys.
Yes. And we have everybody freaking out saying we're giving legal advice. I'm just sitting here asking a question of what could possibly happen. So anything that's said here is just conversation. We are not giving out legal advice of any type. But, these are some of the things that we may have to face. That's more of why I'm bringing these things up, because we don't know what it is we're going to see.
Right. And
we have no idea.
The advice we're giving is get legal advice.
Yeah, that is exactly right. Everybody better find, if you're dealing with anything like this, you better go out now, find yourself an attorney that knows landlord-tenant law like no other, and that you're comfortable with dealing with. You want my advice? My advice is go get your legal advice lined up now, so when you need it, you're not scrambling saying, oh my God, because something tells me these, like you said, Lori, it's a good time to be a landlord-tenant lawyer. It's a very good time. And the good ones are going to get busy. And I think it would be, and Harry, yes, you do freak out. You're the one yelling in all caps on this thing. So
Geez, Harry. I mean, I don't know how many disclaimers I threw out there.
But these are things that, I'm always like, well, what could we possibly see? And just, it's not like, will we ever see something like that? Somebody probably will. It's just a matter of knowing that there's some weird crap right now that's possibly able to go on.
There are scenarios we haven't even imagined that will happen. And so if nothing else, we need to be mindful that anybody can change their mind at any point in time and put us in a situation like that. And so I know one of the other items we had on our list to cover was the seller in possession. And
Tell me about that. That one was freaking me out when I heard about that.
Yeah, I mean, we don't think about it. We grant the seller 2 or 3 days after close of escrow in some cases. And what happens if that seller stays and doesn't leave? Okay, well, they don't have a a tenancy, if we just had in the purchase contract 2 days, close of escrow plus 2 or 3 days, there's no contract, there's no tenancy that's created, yet they need to get out of the property. So what does the new buyer do? They need to call an attorney if that seller doesn't leave, because how do you get rid of them? Well, we just kind of expect them to leave. What if they don't leave? A lot of times, if we are allowing the seller to stay in the property for 30 days or more, we use a residential lease after sale. That creates a tenancy. And now these rules apply. So the recommendation from other attorneys on 2 different calls I was on was use the seller in possession form. And the CAR webinar on this topic covers that in the first 5 minutes. Like, that was a question that Neil Kalin just threw out there immediately. And so use the seller in possession form because it's a license to use the property, not a tenancy. But the reality is, if that seller, and that can be up to 29 days, if that seller stays there, now what? How do you get rid of them? Again, you may need an attorney.
Those attorneys are going to be busy, and it's interesting. I'm reading, Harry's saying your attorney is up on the law. There are too many variables when you do your what ifs. The what ifs are basically, understand that if you get a what if, it ain't the same old what if that it was a year ago.
Right. Well, and the attorneys are still learning this too, though. Now it's a couple weeks in. They're better versed, but the first 2 webinars I saw that first week, they're like, we're still trying to figure it out.
Yeah, and that's something that's really important for people to know, about, like all of the relief programs that came out earlier this year was go ask your accountant, go ask your accountant. Well, guess what? Your accountant's finding this out about the same time as you. And that's what's happening with these laws, is we're finding out about them the same time that the lawyers are. And the lawyers aren't blessed with these bizarre, granted, many think that they are, but they're not blessed with these magical powers. This is the law, boom, it's in your head. Now you know what to do with it. This is going to be a learning situation for everybody involved. And I think the real point of today's conversation is, number one, be aware that this is happening, because a lot of us that don't deal with the rentals and property management on a daily basis, we're like, oh yeah, it's just another one of those darn landlord-tenant laws. Well, guess what? This can start affecting us in how we do our business when we're listing properties, knowing that there's different things going on. Yeah, is it always a problem if somebody doesn't get out? Yeah, but not like your lease is expired, get out, which I would say 80% of the agents right now, probably a higher number, still think. I was until last Friday. Lease is over, get rid of them, they're done. Not realizing, oh, guess what? That's not happening anymore. So
yeah, and hopefully the best case scenario is they just leave. They realize their lease is coming to an end, and they just leave. And that can happen, and that's fine. They leave on their own, that's totally fine. It's just we don't have the ability to say, oh, hey, by the way, it's ending, you're out of here, because they have the opportunity to sign a new lease. They may not know it. They may not know it, though. And so, they might just say, oh, yeah, my lease is due. I don't want to renew, or I can't renew, or they haven't talked about renewing. I guess I got to go. And then they leave. And that's fine.
There's going to be ignorance on all sides, and there's also going to be knowledge on all sides. So just know, I think the takeaway of today's session is know what's going on. So when you get that call from somebody saying, yeah, I've got somebody that was planning on listing their home as soon as this tenant left, and they can get them out, their plans may be tweaked a little bit. And it's just knowing that technical freedom that we had at the end of a lease is not the same. Now, and here's my other question I didn't get to ask. Why is everything in February? Does everybody think in February life's going to be back to normal? That was just an arbitrary date they pulled out of their what?
I have no idea. It's a good question. I have no idea. It probably just was kind of an arbitrary date.
So I guess.
Sounded good.
Yeah, we can probably all sit in
Yeah.
January, see what's happening.
Yeah. I mean, it's February 1st because the transition period ends January 31st. But, people are curious, will that be extended? It may or may not. We don't know. Don't know what is going to influence whether it would be extended or not. It could be a number of things.
Yeah, I mean, depending on projections on, is it going to get worse? Is it going to get better? Are we having magic vaccines? Are we not having one till 2024? I mean, there's so many variables that could happen right now. You can lay out plans all you want. Nobody knows what's going to happen. Nobody knows.
That's right.
Nobody knows. So
That's all I have.
I think that, well, considering it's 10:55,
Good place to stop.
yeah, we should have just named this Lori sharing what Lori didn't know, but now we all do. I guess we could call it that. But honestly, I think this was some really good information. And again, we're not giving legal advice. Just heads up, heads up. That's really all we're trying to do here is just give a heads up because we're all in this together. We don't know from one week to the next what's going on. And, you have to kind of look at things that if CAR is still continuing their Friday series of what's going on each week, and we're still seeing Stephen Thomas doing his market updates each week. Granted, he cut it from twice a week. I mean, that was really crazy when you think about we needed market updates twice a week. We still have a lot of, oh, wait a second. Janet Dorsey says she has breaking news.
Okay.
Well, Janet, do you want to jump in the Zoom or something? We can extend this a little longer. Tell me, Janet, and I'll send you the link. I know there's a little delay, but well, I don't know. Jeff doesn't want the magic vaccine, which is interesting. I did a little unscientific poll on Facebook, and it's about, I would say, 15-1 for anybody wanting a vaccine that's going to come out this year. And then I found out people were sharing my poll on their Facebook page.
So 15 people wanted it, one
for every
15.
For every one yes, I'd say about 15.
Oh, okay. I would agree with that. That's the other way.
Janet shared the breaking news. The Fair Housing Advisory is final and is set to be released in October on either the 1st or the 10th. We're going to have to cover that on its own Monday morning coffee and compliance because we might even have some special guests that week.
Yeah.
Maybe Janet, maybe Leon. I think it would be fun to talk about what a small group can do.
Yeah, I think that would be great.
I think that would be really great. And Jeff Campbell wants to come on too. Should we let Jeff Campbell on?
We need to pre-screen his topic. Let's see.
We may lose all of our following viewers here. I don't know. Either that or they're going to love us even more and say, bring back Jeff every week.
Right. He has a great perspective on things. He makes us think about things from angles we hadn't thought about. So, yeah.
We can introduce him to all of our Orange County friends.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, that was great news to end on. Janet, I'm so happy for that little bit of news. I've been waiting to hear when it was coming out, and maybe we'll plan that for either maybe next week or the week after that, depending on the firm release date. But anyhow, it is 10:58. We'll give you all 2 minutes off. And thank you all for joining us this week. Hopefully you learned some good information. Oh, and one thing I did want to pass on is on that poll on the market, everybody who answered said we're seeing a slowdown and that we're all personally kind of at a standstill. So not the best news, but it's news. Be aware of it. I think we need to take a look at our business. I'm not going to give you guys extra 2 minutes. I think we need to be very honest with our sellers right now and tell them, yeah, it's a hot market, but be mindful of that. We have, somebody posted something somewhere saying, if I have one more agent sit here and tell me it's always a great time to buy or sell, I said, go find yourself an agent that's going to tell you the truth. because it's not always a good time to buy. It's not always a good time to sell. If it's for your specific situation, yeah. But even then, if you have to sell your house, it damn well better be a good time to sell because you have no choice. Same with buying. Is it a good time to buy? Well, if you sold your house and you have somewhere to go, it's always a good time to buy. But if you're a first time buyer, you know what? If we slow down a little bit, I'm going to feel better about helping those people. And yeah, Janet says, watch the pendings in the back on markets. And I think that that's really the best way to judge where the market is right now. I know my last couple of transactions, I was expecting a lot more offers to come in. And did I have multiple offers? Yes. Did I have this insane bidding war that we're hearing about? We always have to remember that news that we're getting is old news. That news is 1 to 3 months old. By the time that the Inmans and the Housing Wires of the world pick it up, it's probably not happening quite at the same rate that it was when they decided it was time for a really good article. So just be mindful and be a good resource for your clients. Tell them honestly what's happening. And if we're seeing a slowdown, is your house going to sell? Yeah, your house is going to sell. Is it going to have multiple offers? There's a good chance you will. Will it be 15 or 20? Maybe not. Are you going to be getting a frantic bidding war? Maybe they went in as high as they could and said, if I can't get it for that, then forget it. And I think we're seeing a lot more of that too. So just be mindful, know the market, know what's going on so you can be the best resource to your clients and to your fellow realtors. So on that note, I think I'm going to hit that button to say stop the live streaming. What do you think, Lori?
Sounds good.
Okay, we'll see you guys all next week. Have a good week and go sell a house. Bye.